All right, thank you so much. I am going to start our new kids on the block, which is where we hear from our new members or newest members to find out more about our new kids, what they are up to, where they came from. And again, it's kind of like the Toastmasters icebreaker speeches of old days. Not old days, I guess they still do it, but where you get to, tell us about yourself. And then we'll have question and answers after this, after our three new kids. You ready? We're going to start with.
Ready, Tony. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll go to Doug. Go ahead.
I want to thank the club for your interest in me. I lived my life in a series of themes. They came and go as butterflies and the breeze. Sometimes stronger, sometimes not, but always there, coming into view just when I need them. These themes have come to me from experiences in life and experiences with other people. I was born in Joliet, Illinois, in the same hospital my mother was born in, and the same hospital she did her nurse's training in 1945. Back then, a young girl could aspire to be a teacher, a nurse, or a homemaker. She did what she was allowed to do. Later on, she would run a sizable emergency room. Her goal was to help others. It was never about her. It was always what she could do to help other people. I adopted her theme as my own. It's not about me. I have lived it all my life. And when I seem to sit quietly in your meeting, it's just the theme playing out. It's not about me. When I was around 4, Mom and Dad were over at my grandparents' house for a family dinner on Sunday, as they were wont to do. And I had wandered off, and my grandfather, a carpenter by trade, came looking for me. I had gone down into the basement, was standing at his tool bench with some of his tools as if an altar. I could barely see the top of the bench and could not reach anything, even though I tried. He did not scold me. He just had the sense of, I know what you're feeling, the magic of the tool. Another theme had emerged, using tools to build something. Later, it would become less about the tool and more about the build. Themes come and they go. You can't expect them to be fully developed. What they will do is emerge again and again, as if to say, you are not listening to me. I need to speak louder? The key is to listen as the theme speaks to you. My parents and I lived in a small home, which was a standard in the day. My dad and grandfather and his carpenter brother Tom came over to build a garage. You could not keep me away from that. I had to be involved. I remember the guys breaking for lunch and thought, this is my chance. When I thought they were not looking, I went to the side of the garage and headed up the ladder to see what they were doing on the roof. About halfway up, the long arm of my dad came and grabbed me and says, your mother will kill me if you get hurt. Themes are powerful things. They draw you in, they build your excitement, they calm the risk, they drive you forward. When I was 12, I got involved in the Boy Scouts and I wanted to learn to earn the swimming merit badge, but I had to learn to swim first. Mom took me to a public school to get lessons. The other kids were 6 and 7 and 8. Embarrassing to be sure, but another theme had emerged. Be willing to endure, to learn what you must in order to accomplish what you must. I became an Eagle Scout before I was 15. I loved the experience and still do. I graduated college in 4 years. My performance was not stellar, but I was working 30 hours a week, taking EKGs in a hospital. When a patient in the hospital would experience a life-threatening event, certain members of the hospital staff would be called to the room. If I was working, that meant me. Often it would mean the person would not survive. Never seemed to bother me, though. You could be just minutes away from your next call. I was an expert at compartmentalization, not allowing one thing to destroy your ability to deal with another. Another theme that I have proved useful to this day. I would only realize its value later. I went to grad school so I could fix that stellar performance. I got 1 B on one test. I was sick, it was hot room at night, and it was statistics. Never been a fan of statistics. Never saw another B on any test. I married my high school sweetheart. She still is at 48 years in as married. We raised two wonderful girls. We got very lucky. And we knew it at the time. You might say, I know some other people who have been married just as long, but she has been sick for the last 31 years. That changes the scope of things. We bought a house and fixed it up, sold it, bought a plain Jane house, could never figure out how to fix it, sold it. Bought a 1929 farmhouse on 0.9 acres of land. Very ugly, good bones, nice pool, huge amount of weeds. Fixed it up to live in. Two girls with no bathtub. It's just called a problem. Later on, we would do a large addition. I did all the base and case moldings, the paint and the stain in that house. I had to. It was another build. A few years back, I put in a wine vineyard, largely because I thought I could. Plan was to sell the grapes or give them to a friend who could make the wine. He had the equipment. When he moved away, I became a winemaker. Currently, we have 35 gallons from 21 and 15 gallons from 22 in stainless steel tanks. We're trying to shepherd to drinkable. That is gallons, not bottles. There's a big difference. People would ask, did you know how to make wine when you started? Well, what does that have to do with it? See, executing a theme does not require you know how, only that you can learn how. In the last couple of years, I have converted the rest of the land to micro-urban farm, 25,000 square feet, over 2,000 drip emitters, and over 23 distinct beds. Everything is grown from seed and everything is on drip, plus 14 fruit trees. The theme of building continues on. I can be afraid, but I don't have to know any better. Several years ago, I started writing. What do you know about writing? Not much. First book done, a parable. Second book is the how and the why of the parable for all to see. Half done. The third book is how and why of what must be done for you to realize your dream in your business. Understand all three, and you need nothing more. Just do. For me, it's another build. In preparing this introduction for you, you gave me the gift of realization, for you see, the themes have come full circle. Build something of importance. If you don't know how, learn. If you are looked upon as too old, get over it. If others think you can't, don't listen. But what you must build as you can. If you know something that will help others, build it. And always remember one theme that lives deep inside me. It's not about me. Back to you, Tony.
Tony, you're on mute. Tony, unmute.
Thank you so much, Alan. I'm sitting here talking and what can I say? Anyway, thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. And we'll have questions and answers in just a moment. I'm sure there are many questions about how to get some of your wine once it's drinkable, and we'll go from there. I'm going to go ahead and call on Lauren Ward, and we'll come back to you, Colin, in just a moment when Lauren's finished. And then, Lauren, if you want to take on, I will spotlight you for everyone and tell us about yourself.
You got me, Tony. You know, the last time that I was asked to introduce myself to somebody was 13 years ago, and I was laying in a hospital bed down in Santa Clara, and I was waiting for a heart transplant. And there's a committee that approves whether or not you get a heart transplant. And one of the things that they require is that you write an introduction to them of yourself. And I'd done a lot of writing over the years. I was in the management consulting business for many years, so I wrote proposals and I wrote reports and so forth. But when you're writing something that you think, even though it may not be true, in your own mind is going to impact whether or not you live or die, it's a tough thing to write. And so I did, and fortunately the committee approved me. And as you can see, 13 years later, I'm still around here, so everything worked out. But in any event, it was a difficult challenge. So I laid awake last night trying to think about what to say to this group. And so here's a brief summary. I'm a small town kid from Kansas, grew up in a rural community, did all the things that kids do in small towns like that, rode my bicycle all over town, grew up working on farms in the summertime, had very limited aspirations because nobody in my family had ever gone to college. And in fact, when I got out of high school, I went to my dad and asked him if I wanted to go to college, if he'd be willing to pay for it. And fortunately, he was. So I graduated from the University of Kansas and decided to go to grad school. And I had a scholarship to Northwestern. And it had been the coldest winter probably in 50 years in Kansas. And some guy from Stanford came through and was recruiting students for their business school. And I knew absolutely nothing about Stanford, but I knew that it was in California and it had to be warmer than Northwestern. So I ended up out here. My wife and I got married in between my first and second year in business school. And I stuck around on the staff and worked there for a while. And since then, my life has kind of been a series of one thing after another. I never really had a career. I just did a bunch of things. I ran a little trucking company. I owned some rice farms. I spent 12 years in the management consulting business, which I dearly love. I once bought the franchise for Chuck E. Cheese for the state of Alaska, built a restaurant, which turned out, amusingly enough, to be the #1 store in their whole system. Owned a fishing boat, did rural subdivisions, built houses, built office buildings. If you've ever been to the Lafayette Park Hotel in Lafayette, that was one of my projects. And what I discovered, which I think is important for any of us to know, is that when you don't know what you're going to do next, something always comes along. And that's kind of a hallmark of what's happened in my life. I've been fortunate enough to have 2 wonderful kids, both of whom are here in the Bay Area and are doing their best to take care of me now that I'm a widower. And I'm in a new position in my life that I'm struggling with to figure out how to deal with. Because of COVID, I'm pretty much isolated from groups of people. When you have a compromised immune system like mine, which is deliberately compromised, you are especially vulnerable. And as we all know, 90% of the people who are dying from COVID now are over 65. So I'm wrestling with the whole problem of what to do. I love to travel. I was a 5,000-hour pilot. We flew from the Arctic clear down to the Amazon. We flew around Southern Africa. It was a big part of my life. And so now I'm kind of locked in and I'm trying to figure out what comes next, if you will. And I have to be honest and tell you that it's not something that I have solved. So I'm kind of at a turning point where the next chapter is coming along. I know it'll be okay. It's always been okay in the past, but I'm sort of in a difficult position right now. So that's kind of a summary of who I am now and what I have been. Tony, back to you.
I'm trying to work my computer. Thank you so much, Lauren, for your, being honest with us and sharing your story with us. So we will come back to Q&As in a moment. And Colin, are you ready?
I think so. I think so. Here we go. Let's try this.
Spotlight you for everyone.
All right.
Share your audio as well as your screen
Video. Yes,
video.
yes, right. Okay, video, share. Hopefully this, good. All right, here we go. Where is my OneDrive? There we go. And documents and, there we are. All right, there we go. Can you all see this?
Almost
All right,
the black screen at the moment.
okay, perfect.
And then,
Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
Can you hear that?
yes,
Great. Here we go.
What would have happened after my Hosanna? Everything on earth would have been extinguished at once, and no events could have occurred.
I'm not really a mugger. I mean, I am. I'll need your purse and your jewelry before we say goodbye, but it's only because I lost my job.
Have you ever thought of settling down to start a family? Now, don't be cross. I'm not judging here. I am selling a future at a price that can't be beat. Any one of these young ladies would make a fine wife.
Look me in the eye and tell me that you are not tired of Shakespeare as it is. You know the rules. You are responsible for your crew.
I have a patent on this one, and I'm proud of it. Circuitous function.
First the doors, then the windows. No, first the windows, then the. No, that's not right!
What are you talking about?
Or was it the vents? Oh, I think I remember now.
Be thankful for each and every day you spent in this material world because you borrowed it. Because you're going into an industry where the law is kill or be killed.
Tell me something else. What city were you in? When the city was attacked, where were you?
Don't worry about keeping in touch. We'll know where you are.
I am a sci-fi novel writer. Yeah. My books are very famous in the Ukraine. I mean the UK.
You haven't seen my secret invention yet.
Well, look at that. Tell everyone dinner's gonna be early.
What should I do? How can I stop this?
And who are you?
Elcon, the space elk.
John, there is one more thing. Back at Winterfell, Bran told me you are Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark's son. That means that you are a Targaryen. Really? Well, that's wonderful news, Brienne. That means I can ride dragons now. Dunny, follow me.
I will not speak on camera. You will bring me tuna now.
You had better figure out a way to get that door open, or you're going to be the next thing experimented on.
And so our hero was tragically taken away from his beloved Green Hill Zone and is sent through time and space to a brand new dangerous location. A strange location. A whole new place for him to discover and survive all brand new dangers.
I'm coming down to get my money.
That's all of them. We'll send the invoice to your boss.
Right then. So how many pigs total? And where are they from again?
415 total. Overstock from Manor Farm.
Really? Did old Jonesy get the place back?
Old Jonesy's probably lying face down in the gutter somewhere. Pigs are still running the place.
Jonesy was fuck all as a farmer. I'll give you that. Still, pigs running a piggery?
Most peculiar indeed. After the livestock revolt against Jonesy, the pigs took charge, and as expected, what with sows farrowing every 6 months, the pigs multiplied and crowded out the rest of the animals they hadn't yet worked to death. And except for rooting the soil, no pig's gonna work a field and grow crops.
I reckon you can't run a farm without hands.
Exactly. So the leader, Mr. Napoleon, decided to rebrand with the old name, hire some farmhands and pay for 'em by selling the farm's 2-month-old porkers to finishing barns like this one. He's a pig of his word, Mr. Napoleon.
So this Mr. Napoleon is selling off his own sons and daughters to get eaten? I don't know what to think of that.
It's all business for Mr. Napoleon. After all, his sows keep popping him out, and he doesn't want to hurt so big and experienced they could revolt against him, like him and his mates did against Jonesy.
Fuck me. Well, if the boss has no problem with it, I won't complain. They're just pigs after all. They're supposed to get eaten.
That they are. Next week's a load from Pilkington's.
Brilliant. See you then.
And there we are, and that illustrates what I'm about.
It's worth waiting for.
Thank you so much, Colin. All right, so we're going to open it for questions and answers. So those of you who have questions, raise your hands and we will, Joanne, I see you first, so come off mute and ask your question to whomever.
Colin, I noticed that Motherland was in those, part of your presentation. I happen to know someone who's deeply involved in that. Peggy Garvey, do you happen to know her?
No, this postcard was designed a few years ago for Contra Costa Theater, and but yeah, it was one of the posters I enjoyed doing for that show.
Great, thank you.
All right, Alan Garber, then Patricia Fripp.
Doug, two things. One is I want to know where you live so I can drink some of that wine that you make. And I've heard it's pretty good. And could you tell us a story with the dogs behind you?
The dogs are the profiling system I've designed, where there are actually 7 different dogs. And if you look at a picture and pick the dog out, I'll tell you who you are and how you say things and how you receive information. So it's fairly inventive. It allows you to help an organization, the people in an organization get to know each other on a different level and a different skill set. Okay. It's not an artificial background. They're actually posters there.
Cool.
And did you design the posters? Did you do the posters, design those?
No, I didn't draw them, but all the words of the posters are mine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You live, Alan asked where you live.
In Arcata, California, right by Carl, down in Pasadena area.
Okay.
Cool. Because I want to know how to get the wine too. Patricia.
I'm always interested, and I would like to hear from all our speakers in order. I love people's life stories in a snapshot. I like to go back to when you were a little boy. What was your first goal? What did you want to be when you grew up? So if we hear from first Doug, then Lauren, and then Colin.
All right, Doug, take it away.
Well, that's kind of a difficult question because I never knew. I like variety. I like to try and do different things, and so therefore, all the things I've shared with you are quite diverse, and that's really the fun of seeing and living something in fair detail.
Okay,
Lauren.
Well, a similar answer to Doug's, I would say. My father was a very unusual man. He was born in 1898, and I have his last grade card. He was taken out of school 4 months after, 4 months into the 6th grade, because I needed him to work on the farm, and he did many different things. So I grew up with kind of the idea that you can do whatever you want to do, and that you can do many different things. And so I think my expectation growing up, like probably a lot of boys, is, well, I'll be kind of like Dad. And so I expected that I would do many different things, and because he had done it and was successful, it gave me the courage to just try a whole bunch of different stuff, as a result of which I've had a lot of fun.
Cool. Thank you, Lauren. And Colin.
Well, when I was a little kid, and I was learning how to draw, and I was getting rather adept at it, I wanted to be a famous artist like Michelangelo. And but I got into a lot of other different things as well, as you can tell, music, acting, and so on. And so it was always, I was always being pulled in various different directions, but I wanted to be a famous artist. And now I'm an artist, but I'm kind of glad I'm not, like famous. But yeah, it's interesting that I sort of kept along that path, more or less.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions? I didn't see Bill Buchanan.
Good morning, Lauren. I was just was listening to your life story, and it sounds like it's almost like one of those Indiana Jones life cycles. You're doing a little bit of everything. I suspect that there's a lot of detail in there that would be fascinating to people, who follow that kind of thing. But have you thought about writing up your life, or a part of it that might be attractive to readers?
Well, that's an interesting observation, Bill. It's a popular thing these days for people to make recordings for their children. And so that one of the things I've thought about is that it might be useful for me to do that, so that my children, when I'm gone, would have another understanding, because there's a lot of stuff that they probably don't know. In fact, one of my challenges when my kids were growing up was the kids would ask me what I do for a living. I could never give them a straight answer. I was thinking as we were going through this about one of the questions that I think a lot of us have to answer as we get older, and I'm now 81, is what have you done that is significant in your life? What have you left behind? And I actually have an answer to that, because I didn't mention it earlier, but for 25 years or so, I did conservation work. And the results of those efforts are around us. If you've ever driven through the Hearst Ranch, for example. That was a conservation project that I worked on. We got 19 miles of shoreline in California and a 93,000 acre ranch that's now protected with an easement. There are wildlife refuges in California and Oregon and elsewhere back in the Midwest along the Mississippi River that I worked on. And I used to tell my kids that I could fly them over the state of California and show them what I've done. And one of the things that I feel best about is that the result of all of those efforts are here and will remain for the benefit of future generations of Californians. The open space, the refuges, the old growth forests, the trout streams, all those kinds of things that I worked on. So, there's that element of the story that maybe needs to be told. I don't know. I'm not sure that I'm a particularly important part of it, but in any event, that's kind of a summary.
Sounds like a lot of important material that you could weave into an interesting story.
Cool. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea myself. So, Janice, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I think it was Lauren who said he had flown an airplane. If that's correct, you mentioned something about flying over the Arctic.
Yeah, I loved flying. As I said, I've got 5,000 hours in the air, and we flew all over it. We built it into our lives. It was, if any of you are still inclined to try it, I would encourage you. Flying, it absolutely enriched our lives. So I spent a lot of time in Alaska. I've been all the way from Nome to Newfoundland, across the whole north. We went down through the Caribbean, down as far as Angel Falls. We just simply built it into our lives. It's one of those wonderful things where you wake up someday and you say, well, I'd like to go here or there. Well, what? You can jump in an airplane and do it. And so, I dragged my kids up to Dead Horse one time just because it was an interesting thing to do. We flew around Mount McKinley. I took my daughter and we went all the way across Canada and ended up in St. John's, Newfoundland. I mean, we really enjoyed flying, and we built it into our lives. And I would say that it was a wonderful thing to do. My son got his license when he was 17, and so fortunately, I've been able to pass it along.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we've got Tana Hope's one of our pilots. She likes flying as well. Betty Tace, you have a question? Come off mute so we can hear it. Yeah.
Didn't click it. First of all, thank you all for your presentations. And, it's really hard on Zoom, but all I can say is, wow, how impressive each and every one of the three of you are with the multitude of what you have done with your lives. None of you have had just a career being a nurse or a whatever. You've done a multitude of brilliant and wonderful, talented things with your lives. You have lived your lives and still are, and there's still more to do and to enjoy. And I don't really have a question. I'm just in awe of the talent that you all have and what you have given back to the world. So that's all I want to do is say thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much. Anybody else have a question? Susan? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Mike, did you? Mike, was that you? Nope. Okay. Susan and then Patricia.
We've got the basis here for a new era.
And anybody else?
Okay, I'm first of all, I did not realize you're from Joliet, Doug, because I must announce to the group that so was our Illinois prison was from Joliet.
Lived across the street from it.
Oh my, and that's why you've stayed on good behavior ever since, I would imagine.
Evidently.
Yeah, but I also want to thank you all for being so candid And I cannot imagine how much work it took for you to put that video together for us, Colin. So I just want to thank you. That was very entertaining. It was illuminating. And I don't even know how many hours it took, but it says how much you enjoy the club that you would do that for us. Thank you.
All right. Patricia?
I have no question.
Yeah, well, Doug and Lauren told us about the influence of their parents, and I would agree, Colin, that was great. We've never had movie trailers, as it were, to tell us about our members. Tell us about the influence your parents had on you. What did they do?
Okay, well, my mom was, she did clerical work, but she was a theater major at Cal. And unfortunately, she regretted never pursuing her acting career after college. And I think that really was detrimental on her health. And she died of alcoholism at 54, or shy of 54. My dad was he was a Korean War vet who eventually went into aviation. And he went into aviation, he thought about it when he was actually on the ground as an infantryman, looking at the Air Force pilots up in the air and going like, I think that's what I want to do. And so he was for many decades working at Buchanan Field as a private pilot. And so I got to fly around a bit, even in a biplane. It was really cool. And then as he got older, he did more just aircraft mechanic work and then just aircraft inspection. And so he worked until 87, then when he could no longer work. And that's when he died, because the work kept him alive. His father, interestingly enough, grandfather Hussey, was an architect who worked for Julia Morgan on the Hearst Castle project. And they did, he and his, and my grandmother Hussey did a lot of traveling around the world. And she was originally from Yorkshire, and in the 1920s did a lot of traveling without a chaperone, which was rather unheard of for a woman at that time. She was very much, but she wound up getting a job in Japan and learning Japanese. And then my grandmother on my mom's side divorced her realtor husband after giving birth to my mom and traveled across the country to the Bay Area. And well, that's eventually where my mom grew up and met my dad and everything. And so we had in the house just a lot of art books, a lot of illustrated classics, a lot of albums, a lot of, ranging from classical recordings to Simon and Garfunkel. And my mom exposed us to a lot of musical theater, a lot of movie musicals, and she knew about 100 different songs from various musicals and such. And so, and she encouraged our artistic tendencies without being a stage mom about it. She was interesting that way. She was a wonderful mother. She was a terrible mother. She was, did all these wonderful things, but also was the unhappiest person I ever knew. And, but yeah, we got into youth orchestras. We got, my sister and I got into the Boy Scouts, eventually became an Eagle Scout. Got into music. I was a bass player for a while until my station wagon got trashed. And then I got into acting more and studied for a bit at ACT, and then auditioned a lot in the 90s. And then in the 2000s, when, digital and online stuff started, that's what really helped me, because now it's like I can edit my own videos and shoot and do all that. So, and then the camera was great. Having digital photography, the DSLR was great in terms of, because at parties I tend to be a wallflower and kind of awkward, but the camera gave me something to do while being at a party, being at an event, and it helped open me up and be a lot more confident in talking with people.
Cool. Very good. Thank you.